Welcome to the fourth installment of our efforts to restore this 1974 Mercury Capri. Actually, not really restore. That was what we bought it for originally, but engine was seized and rust was more extensive than we planned, and we decided that we're going to make it a 24 Hours of Lemons racer. But in a way, it is getting restored. It's going to get a whole new drivetrain from this 2005 Ford Mustang that had been in an accident and we bought very cheaply. It's interesting that the V6 that was in this Mustang is directly derived from the V6, the clone V6 that was in the Capri, and same footprint overall, double the horsepower at this point though, and so we're excited to put that in. We're using the engine and the transmission from this Mustang, and I want the rear axle. Also, you saw early in the video there, we took the pedals. We're going to be using those. We're using the computers and the full wiring harness from the Mustang. Just going to transplant it all into the Capri along with this rear axle. So you saw me removing parking brake lines and the fluid lines for the brakes, for the regular brakes, and now we're removing the panhard bar and these trailing arm suspension. I'm not sure what the right term for them is, but the Mercury has leaf springs, while the Mustang uses coil springs and these swing arms to kind of keep the rear axle where it belongs. I don't think we're going to use these swing arms on the Capri. I think we're just going to use the leaf springs. But we're going to take them and see. The shocks are a happy coincidence in that they're set more inboard on the Mustang, and they actually line up pretty good with the Capri. They'll still be outboard an inch or two from the Capri mounting point, but still within the same plane, and the shock travel is within an inch of what the Capri shock travel was, so that should work well. The other thing that we're removing here is a bracket that stabilizes the center differential. Mounts to the floor of the Mustang. I hope we're going to be able to reuse it in the Mercury, but I'm not sure if the shape of the floor will lend itself to it or not. We're taking it and hoping we can use it. But now we have the axle out. We're going to put this on furniture dollies that came from Harbor Freight. And I highly recommend those. It makes it easy to shift things around in your garage. And if you have a crowded garage like me, being able to roll things from one side to the other is very handy. And these furniture dollies are worth the money. But there we have a rear axle, slightly wider than what's on the Mercury, and we're going to have to take steps to deal with that. You'll see a little later in the video one of the things we're doing. Here I'm just getting the rest of the hardware from the panhard bar. I'm not sure what this bracket does. It just looks like it moves stresses from the passenger side back over to the driver's side, and I'm not sure if we will use it on the Mercury, but may as well have it in our hip pocket. We're taking the fuel tank out. Now we are not going to use the fuel tank on the Mercury, but I can sell it. I'm sure somebody needs a fuel tank for their Mustang, and we got 12 gallons of fuel out of it, which we'll see if Lemons will let me count the value of that. Not insignificant with where gas prices are right now. So we took that out. Again, it's going to find its way onto a furniture dolly so I can roll it around. Sealed all the outlets, even though we took 90% of the fuel out. There's still just a little bit sloshing around. You want to be safe with that. There we took the steering column out, and then we're taking measurements on the front suspension. The caster, camber, toe-in. Well, we're not really getting toe-in. That will set later. But anyway, I wanted measurements of these mounting points, and you can see they do not match up. This car's been in an accident. But it gives me a general idea of what I need to do on the Mercury, and so far so good. The Mercury had very little caster, almost none, and very little camber in the front suspension. So the fact that the Mustang kind of cambers in, that those top shocks come in quite a bit and angle back a bit, actually lend themselves to the Capri architecture better than you'd think. So nothing's happened to make me say, hey, we can't do this, but we'll see. Suspensions are complicated. And here I'm just roping off the two strut towers just to keep everything from flopping around. Now we're going to cut out or grind out some bolts to get this front cross member. I really only want it for the front sway bar mounting brackets. Probably reuse those brackets and that bar on the Mercury. Now we're going to take the doors off. We can sell the doors with the electric roll-up window and everything was working fine. So those are worth something. They also were undamaged in the accident. Both doors are great from a body work standpoint and from a mechanical standpoint. So that's the first reason to save them. The second is there's a possibility that there's immobilization hardware or some kind of switch in the door that the computer needs a signal from, and if that's the case, we may find ourselves with everything all hooked up and we can't start the engine because it needs a signal from the door. We're still researching that. I hope that's not the case, but we're going to hang on to these doors until we have a running engine in the Capri and we know for sure we don't need them, or we don't need parts out of them. Chances are, though, they'll just get resold. Taking the rest of the steering column, and then we're going to move on to removing some insulation so that I can cut out the doghouse here, the transmission tunnel. The transmission on the Capri is quite a bit smaller. You see it here. I've thrown in a quick clip of it than the transmission on the Mustang. The Mustang is a much beefier transmission. While the engines are the same size, the Mustang's got a 5-speed, much more heavy-duty transmission than the 4-speed on the Capri. I know I'm going to need a little bit bigger bell housing space, and so rather than just take the first couple feet of this bell housing to graft into the Capri, I'm going to take the whole center tunnel because it gives me the handbrake, it gives me the shift leather and all the mounting hardware that I can graft into the Capri. I don't know that I will use this whole tunnel, but all the parts I need are here, and it's not that much more work to cut another couple feet and just take the whole tunnel. The other thing we did with the Sawzall was take those front shock towers out so that we can graft whatever portion of those we need into the Capri. Now let's see. We're taking taillights, again, something you can sell to offset costs for your Lemons car. And then we're going to take the rear trunk lid and spoiler, and the alarm on the Mustang lives back there in the trunk. It came with the wiring harness for that trunk lid. We're taking the muffler. You can't run a Lemons car without a muffler, so we figure let's use this one. That, and now if you remember from the last video, I showed a still photo of the spare tire well in the Capri, and that it was completely rusted out. The bottom of it's just gone. And so we said, well, we've got good sheet metal here on the Mustang. Let's just cut this spare tire well out completely, and we'll use, we'll probably end up only needing about half of this metal to repair the Capri, but it was already stamped in the right shape. Let's just take it. Then I just cut out the panhard mounting bracket. We may graft that in. We may just use it for dimensions and build something out of angle iron. And now we're cutting out the rear fenders. We just want these flares, really. If we graft the flare into the Capri, we will be able to cover the extra size of that rear axle that it's wider than our wheel well on the Capri. So we don't need everything we're cutting off the Mustang here. We're cutting a few extra inches, and we're cutting the inner fender as well. We'll probably just end up using the outer bit of sheet metal, and of course we'll clean it up nicely and TIG weld it into the Capri. May have to change the radius slightly so that it fits right. Anyway, it's raw material. We took everything we could from that Mustang, and now we have a carcass. That carcass has got to go to the metal. It's not really the wrecking yard. The tow trucks wouldn't come and get it because it wasn't enough of it left. But we could take it to the scrap metal place. And the U-Haul place did not have a car hauler for me. And so we decided to use our military trailer here. It's well within the weight limits of the trailer. It just isn't going to fit in the trailer. It's going to balance on top, which we were skeptical that we could do it, but we thought we'd try. It's in the spirit of lemons. Let's just see if we can put this thing on this trailer. And the answer was, actually you could. If you cut off the front of the front of that car, it actually balanced quite nicely on that trailer. One guy could wheel it around. So fore and aft, it balanced great. Weight, it was fine. But it was just too top heavy for me to be comfortable, and I called it off. I said, no, we're not going to try and do this on the trailer. We'll see if we can get a U-Haul tomorrow. Here's all the parts we got off the Mustang. Not all of them, but a bunch of the parts we have off the Mustang that we're going to sell to help offset cost of both the Mustang. I think we're going to completely pay for the Mustang and probably completely pay for the Capri also with all these parts. Also a Chihuahua bed. Turns out the headliner is Chihuahua approved. And then finally, you see, we took the carcass to get our $162 in scrap metal value from what was left of our poor Mustang. We appreciate its sacrifice, and it will live on in the Capri. And we did get to watch this guy who really knows what he's doing with the magnet here at the scrapyard. That magnet is not quite enough, and then he grabbed it a little bit more by the side. He flipped it over and then drug it away. Anyway, thank you for watching, and please hit like, and there'll be more soon. Thanks again.